This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is Sportish on For the Fans, the show that we started to talk about sports during the global sports shutdown. I'm Geoff Brault alongside Dr. Keith Strudler. He runs the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Looks like he just got off a shift as a mall Santa and only got 50% of the way undressed. Would you do all your buttons up next week? My God, man, have
This
some
is
class.
a Henley. They're supposed to be like this. And by the way, as much as I enjoy the mall Santa, it's still 6 feet. 6 feet is 6 feet. I understand they all want to sit on the lap. It's still 6 feet. Question for you. What do you pretend to be doing before the show comes on when you know we're on camera?
What do I pretend to be doing? I'm literally looking at my clock to know when I can stop doing the awkward sit in silence for 30 seconds. Should we let people behind the curtain, Keith, as to why we have to start this show by just sitting for 30 seconds in silence?
We have play-in music. That's why. We have play-in music, and that's why. So the idea is we build up a little momentum. Everyone gets all jazzed up for the show. You're ready to run through a brick wall, but we're on camera. They get to see us. So what I do is I pretend to write stuff when I am actually writing something, but it's just doodles. I make it look like I'm writing important notes for the show, but all I'm really doing is just making notes on a piece of paper.
So you had a question for me. I have a question for you, sure. Florida Gator football fan. Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
Are we gonna go right into it? This is it?
I give you an Austin Powers quote, and you tell me what it's like to watch your team's national championship hope, faints as they may have been, watch them go down the tubes because a defensive back decided to chuck a Nike.
So Saturday night was COVID has stretched the kind of, the abilities and the resilience of the Strudler household. So there are times when all of us collectively say, I can't take it anymore. Like I don't think there's been a single person in this house that hasn't at some point in the last 9 months said, I'm leaving and not coming back. And realize that includes the youngest, who is 10. So we were having a relatively pleasant evening Saturday. Of course, we had the one thing that everyone in this world wants, the one thing the vaccines bring to all of us. We had, as Gator fans, we had hope. We had hope. Our team had only one loss, and it was not a bad loss. A loss to another one-loss SEC team, Texas A&M, on the road in a game they could have won early in the season. We had hope. We had now a Heisman Trophy quarterback candidate, right? We have a tight end who is destined to NFL fame, who was actually sitting for the game because we wanted to rest him up for the big game next week, which we will still be playing, unfortunately. By the way, I'm on a scorched earth policy. I want the season to end. I want it to end for everybody. It's over for me. I want it to be over for everybody. So we had hope. Now I understand. We've been to the University of Alabama. We know the Darth Vader that exists there. We know that the chances of beating Alabama in an SEC title game right now are slim, very slim. But you know what? That's why they play the game. We were going to show up. There was going to be a Dr. Pepper halftime show, and we were going to take our best shot. We were going to put our Heisman quarterback out in the field, and we were going to take our best shot. And you know what was going to happen if we won? What was going to happen, Geoff, if we won? What was going to happen?
You probably would have been going to the college football playoff.
We would have been going to the college football playoffs, probably in a 2 or 3 slot. We'd probably be in the 2 or 3 slot, the SEC champions. And by the way, that banner is going to go up in the stadium, the SEC champions. They can't take that away from us, can they? Right? So the game's going back and forth. Keeps looking like we're about to, right? And you can understand myself, Sloan, and Elliot getting really excited. I tell them, keep the faith. Terrible first half. Keep the faith. Finally. And by the way, we're consuming a lot of food products. It's a very unhealthy moment, but this is a great moment. We're all up way too late past our bedtimes. That's okay. We're having a good time. With right around 2 minutes left, we have stopped the somehow prolific LSU offense, despite the fact that it basically consists of a bunch of JUCO players at this point. We've stopped them on a 3 and out. And we're about to get the ball back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
About to get the ball back.
Tie game, fourth quarter.
Tie game. And by the way, Florida's offense, admittedly, at this point has found its groove. Like I think most people would have suggested that if Florida had gotten the ball back with 2 minutes on their 20-yard line, it's 80% chance we're going to win that game.
Points are on the board. Points were not the problem. The offense was not the issue.
And to be clear, worst case scenario, we're going to overtime, and I like my chances in overtime, right? So what happens? They stop. And by the way, it was an awkward last play. The guy tries, I forget who it was on the LSU side, tries to climb over the players. I guess the shoe came off. A lot of things had to happen exactly the way they happened to make this. Because how often does a shoe fall off? They're laced, they're tight, not very often. Like
they're designed not to come off.
What? I mean, honestly, there are a lot of people to blame here. Was it Nike? Nike is to blame here. I mean, whoever the turf manager at the University of Florida, that person should be out of job right now. There are a lot of people to blame right now. So somehow the shoe comes off for whatever reason. Wilson, I'm blanking on his first name.
Marco Wilson.
Marco Wilson, who has an older brother, is also a great football player. Marco Wilson, in the heat of the moment, who, by the way, and this is how you can tell how Sloan has become kind of like, he's become like us. Like he's literally screaming like, Wilson shouldn't even be in the game at this point. He's messed up 4 times already. Why is he even in the game? He's 13. Like he's already gone off the deep end, right? So he's losing it. Like he's basically like a Gator listserv or message board at this point, right? So Marco Wilson picks up the shoe, throws it 20 yards down the field. How do we know he throws it 20 yards down the field?
They mark the field.
Also, because the ref gave one of the better explanations of a penalty in history when he explained that Marco Wilson threw the shoe 20 yards down the field. So obviously now we're distraught in our house. We've given up. It made it even worse. They score the field goal. We're we're not going to play Alabama. We're not going to get to play Notre Dame in the playoffs. And then even worse, just to torture us. And
college
this is
kickers, man.
Kyle Trask drives the team. By the way, LSU, to call LSU defense Swiss cheese at that point is unfair to cheesemongers, right? It's on because Kyle Trask runs that, gets down the field. By the way, Florida should have won this game 15 times. How many times were they in the red zone? How many times were they? 80?
Welcome to why we're talking about this.
They line up for a 51-yard field goal. And Elliott made a classic mistake. You know what Elliott did at that point? Started talking about overtime.
Oh yeah. He's too young. He's too young to have his heart broken by college kickers.
Yeah. So
Elliott
and I have had a talking about that, how we're not going to do that again. We're not going to ruin everyone's fun. So missed the field goal. LSU has won a game that most people thought they probably maybe even shouldn't be playing at this point because they have so few players. In Florida, here's the thing. I know, look, they probably shouldn't even be playing. Like maybe college, who knows? Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. We've even had this conversation. Hey, this season should just be for fun, right? It's just for fun, right? Because it's not a real season, right? LSU's not full strength, right? But here's what was about to happen. Florida was about to play a very real SEC championship game. Sure.
There's 5 teams that can take it seriously. And they were one of them.
And so it may be fake to everyone else, but it was getting very real. We were going to play Alabama. And at that point, I don't want to hear about who's sitting out, who's not playing. Like we are going to play in the championship game. And by the way, by that time, it seems like both of those teams COVID's run through almost the entire squad, certainly both head coaches at that point. So now here's the worst part. This is the worst part. This is like having to go do something with your ex-wife, right? Like, so sure. Now, now
I was in this game. This game mattered.
Now we got to go play Alabama in a game. You know what's going to hurt me the most? What do you think will be the worst? Oh, if we win that game, I am going to be beside myself because Alabama doesn't need the win anymore. They don't even need it. Although I bet you there are a bunch of linemen would rather not run stadiums Monday morning. So they're going to win the game anyway. So now we got to watch that. It's really, and so here's the other problem. I like you. I think we've always said it's not fair to critique these college athletes, right? It's unfair when you really, I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, you know, he's having a bad game, but it's really not fair to personally attack these players the way you might, if this happened in the NFL, I mean, you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
It's unfair, right?
It's different. It's different.
It's different. They're not compensated. You know, there's all these things, and they're playing, particularly right now. I will tell you, that perspective is not shared by the vast majority of message boards run by the Florida Gator fan.
No, it is not.
But you know what's amazing? Not only, I mean, look, Margo Wilson probably should stay off the internet for a while, and probably, you know, shouldn't do any public appearances on behalf of the Gators for the time being. Like, you know, so that's A. B, the number of people in Gator Nation that have called for Dan Mullen to be fired is remarkable. I mean,
yes. Who, by the way, had no problem with Dan Mullen when he was having his little performance 6 weeks ago when he went crazy in the tunnel, started basically encouraging people to just virus up the place.
But they are like, we know he's a loser. He's not a winner. He's not. So people are crazy. Like they want to, like, remember, we're like 5 years as a Gator fan should remember, we're like 5 years from complete irrelevance. Like we had a really rough period for a while. People have to remember the post Tim Tebow to, you know, to recently were relatively rough for a school of, like, we were becoming like University of Texas, a school that had all the advantages and all the resources that could not win games. And we rebounded. And Dan Mullen, as crazy as he is, crazy as a loon, seems like he's coaching pretty well. Like we were one really stupid decision away from playing in an SEC title and a very good so it's amazing how quickly though the fans turn, but they are adamant he has no business coaching in the SEC. And not only that, fans have decided, look, we're gonna have to go big, like as if hiring Dan Mullen wasn't a big hire. They're like, it basically is like, we're going to have to resurrect down Shola. Like we're going to have to figure out how to get Shola back on the side.
We've made great progress with hologram technology.
But if someone said, you know what, the Gators are going to hire Nick Saban, like this group's like not big enough. We're going to have to go bigger than that. So it is, I forgot how much losing a game that matters to you actually hurts. Cause you kind of lose your fandom a little bit. Like, it's been a long time since I found myself like staring into the distance, like just like vapidly eating potato chips, just like hoping tomorrow never comes, like having that kind of moment and just trying to replay, like wishing you could have a replay. Like, was that real? And then waking up the next morning and feeling that numb feeling in your legs. Like, oh, was it real? Did I dream that? Like pinching yourself, checking your phone. Like, did the Gators actually lose? And I think my biggest mistake was at like 2:30 in the morning, waking up Andra, trying to explain to her what just happened. And surprisingly, she was not interested.
I actually have a theory, completely untested, unproven theory, that a big reason why people like sports is because of the feeling you get after your team loses a big game. It's one of the most powerful emotions that someone can feel. And honestly, that feeling is worse and more powerful than the inverse feeling when your team wins a championship. Absolutely. And I really think, like, in an odd way, just the fact that you can feel an emotion that strongly is a big reason why people are bound to sports. Love's not the opposite of indifference. Oh, no, excuse me, I said that wrong. Love is the opposite of indifference. Love's not the opposite of hate, right? Right. Right. So, no, I agree. Like when you win, like if the Gators had won, I would have been happy. I would have been more relieved. Like relief. I've often said that winning is relief, and losing is emotive. Yeah. You know why? Because once you're in that game, you've already banked it. You've kind of banked it. You've assumed. Well, now I will tell you, there are times when the only times those are not true is when you are with a team that has gone through a desert.
So when you assume you're going to lose every time, so I will tell you when that emotion wasn't that case. When the Rockets won their first title in 94, I had lived my whole life without a Houston championship at that point, right? And I was just out of college, and I was like, look, we're never going to win anything, right? And I'd gone through some awful Oilers years. I was a Bucks fan growing up, so I'd gone through some really rough moments with them. You know, the Astros obviously were what the Astros were. And the Rockets were always one of the best teams that could not get through the Sonics or the Jazz. But that feeling, so I can remember having to pull over my car because I was listening to a playoff game against like the Sonics in the car and knowing that if I didn't pull over, I was going to be dangerous on the road. So I just needed to kind of stay in a rest area and like emote for a little while, like just kind of get it out of my system because I wasn't safe to be around. So that feeling when the Rockets won was such a cathartic, it was beyond relief. Like that was true joy.
So I think when you're experiencing a championship in a community of fans, right? So if you're surrounded by people that are also rooting for the team, that's an exceptional moment. That's so fun to share collective joy. But the relief to me comes in when you're on an island, right? When you're the only Florida Gator fan you know, and everybody knows that you're a Florida Gator fan, and your championship hopes are spoiled because a defensive back threw a shoe. I think so much of that emotion comes from the fact that all of these people are going to know that your team failed. And if you surround yourself with the kind of people I surround myself with, they're going to let you know about it.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel awful, and you're going to have to make excuses about it. And you're going to have to be like, it was a tough one. We'll get them next year. And you're just going to hear about it over and over and over and over. And
it's
that's
possible
something that I think a lot of people want to avoid.
It's possible. That wasn't this for me. This was just the true agony of watching. Like we've been waiting for a while now for the Gators to kind of rebuild strength. And the other thing that everyone had been taught, this is one of those where you've cashed your check already, right? So, and now it bounces. And so like I had already said, like, next week we got a big Saturday. Like the plan was already in. We were going to, we're going to get appetizers. We're going to order food. We're going to have a good time. It's going to be this incredible moment. We're going to watch the Gators play like the old days. The Gators play Alabama in the SEC title game. Like we're going to relive bring back Danny Werfel. Let's do it. Like this is all happening. And to watch it fade away, like, the feeling the Gator fans had when the flag started to come out, because a lot of us were like, what just happened? Like, what happened? Excuse me? Because I was assuming maybe it was a late hit. I was still stupid. But when you heard it, you couldn't believe just how stupid it was. That's what hurt the most. It was really painful. And I will tell you, so I think you're right. Like, I don't think Alabama fans feel joy anymore when they win a title. I really don't. They've won like 70. Like if you don't win a national title at the University of Alabama, that's disappointment. Like it's an awful year. There's no real joy left in Alabama. You got to sink around the drain for a little while.
Well, the only thing that's worse than losing, when you're trying to get to the top of the mountain is losing after you've been the dominant force, right? Because you know that everybody is waiting for you to fail, and it's going to feel 5 times as bad when you finally falter, right? When Alabama doesn't succeed and everyone in the world is ecstatic that they failed, that feels awful.
Yep. Yeah. So you can't be excited. Like, it's just like you win a national title, be like, oh, it's January. We want to see. Right. Of course it's January. It's title season. Yeah, right.
All you're excited about is that the rest of the SEC doesn't get to laugh at you. Yeah. You're like, oh, we got another year reprieve of still being great. Put another ring on the finger.
I actually think that's got to be look, it's clearly a brutal coaching environment. No one's feeling bad for Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney for having all the resources they have at this point. But it's got to be a tough thing. And it does take a particular mentality to be able to kind of do this every year and go through all of this just so you don't feel awful. Because that's what you're doing, right? Right. I don't doubt for a second that it's, there's a ton of guys that can take a coaching job and fight to the death because they want to finally find a way for their team to win a conference championship or to kind of do something that the team hasn't done for a while. Right. So, I mean, that's not a hard thing. And it's in some ways the easiest thing to get yourself geared up for is to walk into a really bad situation and just try. And every year you're like, and so the year the year you win a conference title or even finish second, it's just the joy is just pronounced. I understand coaches, they live and die for that stuff. That's what they're made out of. The Nick Saban job though, I mean, how do you Bill Belichick, like, how do you do this?
The expectations are calibrated in such a ridiculous way when you're a Nick Saban or a Bill Belichick, right? So you're talking about how you were like, man, we just want to get through this LSU game so that we can watch us play Alabama in the SEC championship. Alabama is still 4 games removed, right, from feeling like they're going to care as much as you're caring about being in this game. Yeah. And people, and especially in college sports where you're basically starting over with a new roster every year.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So that now you hit it. So that's the problem. So this is why college sports is the worst. This is why it's the worst. I'll tell you why. Because that's exactly it. When you lose, you don't just say, like, in the pros, I understand there's free agency, but you know what? When you lose, you lose in most team situations, unless you're in a really volatile free agency kind of moment, like an NBA situation where you know the team's breaking up, you can rationalize and say, all right, the nucleus of our team is like when Dallas lost. Hey, the nucleus of our team is young. We're going to be fine. Even like you can do that, right? Miami lost in the finals. Miami's best time. I understand you only get so many opportunities. Their best year should be ahead of them. When you lose a college game, that crew, like they're gone. They're leaving. But there's no more Kyle Trask. It's over.
Think about it from the Alabama perspective, where you're expected to do it every single year, and people start to take for granted how difficult it is. It's not easier to win your 5th in a row than your 4th and your 3rd than your 2nd. Like, it's almost more difficult as the years go on, and the expectations that are placed, that is very, very difficult.
The only thing that makes it easier is when you get that good, your recruiting is so pronounced, and you've hired now the best coaches. You all of a sudden your budget is such that you're paying your assistant coaches what most head coaches get paid. So, but I will tell you and I will tell you, college basketball is the worst. When your team, I don't think there's a worse feeling than having your team lose in the NCAA finals. I actually think it's worse. This is one. Oh no!
Losing I don't know NCAA finals. No, I think because you had a great, that's a bad feeling, of course, because you lost the championship game, but you still had a ton of great memories to get to that point. I mean, I don't know what could be more painful than running undefeated through the regular season and losing in the semifinals of your conference tournament if you're a 1-bid league and that means you're not going. So if you're one of those schools that gets one chance every 20 years to go to the NCAA tournament and you don't get there, I can't imagine what that feeling is like.
That's a tough feeling. I'm going to say this. Let's say you are, I don't know, I'll pick you're Marquette, right? And you're somehow Marquette has snuck its way through, Marquette's a good team. They're not an NCAA finals team, right?
No, right. Well, they got to the Final Four with Dwayne Wade.
Yes. All right. But so you're Marquette. And when's the last time they won an NCAA? Have they back in the days? Didn't they win way back?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they had some very good teams back in the 60s.
I don't have my 1950s record book in front of me. I don't know.
So you're in the finals. You somehow have you struck lightning. You're in getting to the NCAA finals is one of the hardest things. That you got to win 6 games. It's crazy. All right. Yeah. You're in the finals and you lose. Mm-hmm. You're going to look around and realize in your lifetime, you are never going to have that opportunity again. Never. You are never.
But yes, but with the benefit of hindsight, you're going to remember all the great things that happened to get you to that point. And you're going to celebrate all the success that got you there. And over time, because you're right. You're right. No. You're right in the immediate aftermath. Like, you are going to feel awful. And then as time goes on, you're going to start to acknowledge the accomplishment for what it was. Like, whether you're a big school, whether you're a small school, after a while, you focus in on all the joy that got you to that point. If you don't ever get that,
how much joy?
You don't check anything off. How much joy? Expectation phase.
How much joy? How much joy do Knicks fans have about 1994? How much joy?
Right now, that's all the joy they have, though. Right now, that's all they can hang their hat on.
But when I tell
that's
people
all they got. That is the high water mark.
When I tell people I'm a Rockets fan, I forgot. Like, this is like, that the great doc that covered the Miracle on Ice from the Soviets' perspective. You've seen that 30 for 30.
No, I'd like to.
Oh no, it's fantastic. And you forget there was another team, another group of players that felt as great as we all felt. They felt that awful. And the expectations, you want to talk about high expectations.
Well,
the penalties were a little more pronounced.
Yeah, a little more severe.
losing when you're part of the Red Army, not quite. I think we've all seen Rocky 4. Like we know how this works out. So I got my Gator bug out. We're good.
We're going to talk
fine,
about.
I feel fine.
Yeah, I can tell. We're going to talk about college football for the majority of this show, and I want to start with the team that beat Florida because they did something. They did one of my favorite things in college sports. LSU, prior to the Florida game, self-imposed a postseason ban on themselves.
Yes,
they said, guys, we have to atone for some misdeeds.
Wait, say it in Ed Ogeron's voice, guys. We're gonna,
guys.
You can't do it.
We did some things in the past I'm not proud of.
You can't. How would you like to hear Ed Ogeron do like a dramatic reading?
Oh, I would love it. I would love to hear him read Shakespeare. Romeo, wherefore down?
No, you know what? My number one, the Gettysburg Address.
4 go, 7 years ago.
Brought forth a nation conceived. Liberty.
But Keith, they self-imposed a postseason ban in a year in which they weren't going to the postseason.
No one wants to go to the postseason other than the playoff teams. Who wants to go to the Liberty Bowl? Guys, we're playing in Boise. We're doing, what's the one? What's the bowl they play up there on the frozen
the
turf?
Albertsons Potato Bowl? I don't know.
It's always Boise State against someone because no one else wants to do it.
Right.
Guys, good news. We got New Year's Eve plans. Unfortunately, it's in Shreveport, Louisiana.
I would just like to give you this opportunity, though. In the spirit of LSU self-imposing a postseason ban, would you like to self-impose a ban on yourself for anything?
Myself?
Yeah. Would you like to self-impose a ban on yourself?
Sure, I probably would. Look, it's probably time for me to stop giving to others and focusing on myself a little bit.
Oh, good God. So you're self-imposing a ban on charity. And you do realize that in the context of this exercise, what you're saying is you are not a charitable person because LSU banned themselves from something they weren't going to be able to do. So you are banning yourself from doing charity, which is you telling everyone in the throes of the holiday season, as we're recording this on night 6 of Hanukkah, you are not going to be charitable. You're saying, you know what? Me helping others, me giving to the world, it's not going to happen anymore.
Right. I'm not going to, you know what I'll give up? I'm not going to clean our bathrooms this month. How about that?
You're self-imposing a ban on cleaning the bathroom.
I'm not imposing. I haven't done anything wrong. They cheated. I haven't cheated. I haven't cheated at anything. I haven't cheated. So no, I won't do that.
All right. So we've established that you hate charity.
That's not true. I'm very generous.
But now we're going to talk about something I think you're going to like very much.
Okay.
Gus Malzahn was fired at Auburn.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn will be paid $21.7 million to go away.
Yep.
What a dream. What a dream. I can only hope that one day someone will pay me any sum of money to do nothing.
Yeah, well, there's probably going to be a similar payout going on in Ann Arbor relatively soon if things continue on the track that they are going. Apparently they're going to be having that conversation after the season over. So yeah, it is. Look, say what you want about Gus Malzahn. He's had some big wins. He's had some big moments. Obviously, part of me sometimes thinks that, look. Auburn considers itself a premier program. They do spend a lot of money. I would argue it probably isn't. It certainly shouldn't be spoken of the same way that we talk about LSU and Alabama and Florida, even and some of the other. I think the expectations are unduly high. If you really start to break down, let's look at Auburn. Although, look, the profile is not all that different than Clemson, and Clemson has found a way to make it work. I think Clemson I think people don't give Clemson the credit they deserve for becoming at this point, kind of one of the blue bloods, even though I don't know that they necessarily have that same kind of claim to the throne. And there's some institutional things that make it easier at Alabama. So
Clemson's got their Cam Newton right now, and Auburn had their Cam Newton back in the day. Right. I think Clemson's also got their Cam Newton and a much easier conference schedule.
Yeah, and they have the coach, obviously. I think Auburn, when they had Cam Newton, assumed that it wasn't Cam, and it was, right? I think
they may have assumed that, and they were wrong.
Right. Bo Jackson, Cam, like these people are special for a reason. Like they are seminal. They don't come along every week, as opposed to Alabama, where they kind of do come along every week. Like Alabama just gets a collection.
Next man up.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
There's a difference. That doesn't happen. And it used to happen at Florida, and it's starting to happen a little bit again. But I am surprised that at this particular moment, that schools feel comfortable making that decision at a time when every university has publicly declared how much they've lost this past year. Do you think maybe what they should do is apply for the CARES Act and be like, we'd like to apply 21 million. Like, look,
you really want people to bring out the pitchforks.
But you could make the argument, because you have to basically make the argument this is money that's being spent because of COVID. You could be like, look, if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think our team would have been this bad. We probably wouldn't have had to fire him. So technically COVID related. I'm surprised though that they are able to do this. Well, look, I think all you need to know is you can do this publicly in the state of Alabama. So in the state of Alabama, you can say, hey, we're literally shutting down half of our state, but we got to replace this coach. Like especially now where you know who the new senator is, got a lot of Tuberville's, probably bringing the hammer down saying, hey, I'm in government now, even though I don't even know how government works quite fully, which I'm not sure about the history of this country.
He'll pick it up as he goes along.
Can't tell you the difference between fascism and socialism. We fought one of those in a war at some point. But that said, in the state of Alabama, apparently you can throw out $21 million because your football coach is not winning enough. In a year when everyone's having trouble, I'd be surprised if you could pull that off in some other states. I'd be surprised if that would fly at Rutgers right now, right? Obviously, it's a different economy. I'd be even surprised if you could pull that off at Berkeley, at Cal, or at UCLA. I feel like that might get the attention of a few state senators and some some influential people that wouldn't take kindly to that. But by the way, nothing wrong with being paid $21 million to not work.
And let me ask you this. You get paid $21.7 million. You get paid $21.7 million. You lose your job, which is your dream job, which is an exceptionally rare job. Are you upset? Because I don't think I could be upset. If you're fired from this thing that you love tremendously, here's $21.7 million. I think I'd be like, all right.
That's, you know what? That's why we will never have jobs that pay $21.7 million. Because we will never care that deeply about. We just literally had conversation how you said taking a phone call after 6 for work is a bit shaky.
Oh, yeah. Phones have a mute button for a reason.
So, I mean, you're literally like, so if you were the coach at Auburn, and you would be, I assume he's taking calls after 11. Your voicemail would be like, hi, this is Geoff Brault, head football coach of Auburn football. Yeah. I'm not at my desk right now.
That's right. Please leave a message and I will call you back.
Would you have, as the head football coach at Auburn, would you have an out of office email reply?
I tell you what, I'd have an executive assistant.
By the way, I know you people are going to hate me for this if they don't already. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is people putting on the out of office email. I know I hate it.
This might surprise you, but I also don't like the out of office email because everybody in the world carries something in their pocket and you're never so busy. These people that lie, I will be without access to email for 4 days. No, you won't. No, you won't.
Where are you? Are you climbing Mount Everest? And they, by the way, have email too.
Unless you are going to find the lost city of Z, you will not have access to email. You won't. If something's that important, you will see it.
I feel like it's such a way of kind of telling everyone, like, I understand this is my job and I do get paid for it. I just need you to know where it falls on my list of priorities in this world.
Right. While we're talking about,
let me. So here's the question though.
Okay.
This is a real question when it comes to and again, we can't relate because, we don't have that same kind of fanaticism that they do to get to where they are. But some of these contracts have riders in them that you get paid, but if you get another job,
Sure. Yeah.
So do you ride it out?
Absolutely, you ride it out. But I can't imagine anything better than getting paid gross sums of money to do nothing. And by nothing, I don't mean nothing. I mean whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot imagine a better scenario. But I'm also I also look down on those people that if I won the lottery, I'd still go to work. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The dumbest thing you have the option to do whatever you want. And what you're going to do is work.
What would you do if you won?
Play golf every day, every single day.
Well, how would Sportish fit into your?
Sure, Monday nights I do Sportish.
Well, could we expand a little bit? If we could we buy a marketing assistant? Can we upgrade Michael Wallace at that point?
If we had that kind of money, we might start a show without you fidgeting with your camera and talking about how it's not straight. How every week you can't get the camera lined up right. We'd finally get that problem taken care of. I can promise you that.
Could we? I mean, we'd hire someone. We'd actually pay someone. We'd actually have to make, God forbid, some graphics. I mean, who the hell knows? I'd like if you're getting paid $21 million. So after taxes, you're looking at 12, 13 or something like that. You're in a high tax state. Would you move? Would you move to make sure that I don't think
I'd move. I think I'd live wherever the heck I wanted.
No, I'm just saying, would you go to a low tax state? Might you do a situation where you're spending one more day in Arizona than you do in New York?
It would only make sense to set up permanent residency in a but I actually don't think it would matter if you get a big lump sum payment, right? Because you already have your residency established wherever it is. I can't just be like, hey, I got $100 million coming my way. I'm gonna set up shop in Florida. Like, I don't think it works that way.
I don't. Next up, tax attorney. We should have. Hey, so when Gus Malzahn gets paid 21.7,
let's say I come into a large sum of money and don't want to give it to the government. What do I need to do?
You would have done well as a trust fund, baby.
I would have done great. In fact, I tell my parents every time I see them how upset I am that I don't have family wealth.
Yeah, you would have done really well with that. So. It's unfortunate.
Before we wrap this college football episode up, I want to talk about something serious as it comes to head coaches being relieved of their duties. When this college football season began, there were 14 black head coaches at the FBS level. 3 of them were fired last week. Lovie Smith at Illinois, Kevin Sumlin at Arizona, Derek Mason at Vanderbilt. I guess he was fired a couple weeks ago. So that drops the number of black head coaches at the FBS level down to 11, negligibly more than it was 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago was at 9 or something like that. There has been an awful lot of news made this year about athletes using their platform to fight for equality, for racial justice. Is that ever going to carry over to the people that are hired to lead these programs?
You would think so. And look, generally speaking, I mean, there's such attention paid to this issue now nationally, right? I mean, starting literally at the top when Joe Biden is picking his cabinet, the idea of having representation that resembles America seems to be such kind of a prominent conversation point. And I think people are holding him to that policy. It doesn't mean that he can't have white men working in his cabinet, obviously, but he is looking to fill his cabinet with qualified people that represent what our country looks like. Now, if you look at college football, you certainly would hope, and I think the argument's been made for a long time, not that there is such kind of a dearth of black head football coaches, but that leadership at the top looks so different from the sport as a whole. When you have a sport that's over 50% African-American and you have so few kind of people in positions of authority that look more like the athletes that play this, it really does start to resemble something that they, increasingly are not proud of. It's a really, look, there's 2 issues here. And one, and I clearly don't have the answers either. One is whether or not black coaches are given the same amount of latitude to have bad seasons before they get let go, and whether they're given the same amount of resources to get there. Right. I mean, look, is Illinois playing good football? No. Is Vanderbilt playing good football? No. I mean, so it's hard on each one of these individual cases, right, to say, no, they were doing a great job. And by the way, Lovie Smith's a good coach. I mean, by all accounts,
I mean, NFL head coach.
right? And NFL, a successful NFL head coach, right?
Yes.
Which is, very hard to be when you're dealing with what you deal with in the NFL and salary caps and so forth. So that becomes kind of, that's the one question you have to deal with. And the second is, we talk about pipelines and it becomes very kind of, I don't know, cliche, like is the pipeline, but it's a real question. What are universities doing to try to build? Because you want to hire, if you're a college president and an athletic director, I hope at this point that you really are trying to hire the most qualified in the end of the day, it's a performance game, right? Mm-hmm. You got to win, right? Gus Malzahn's going to let go because that Auburn team's not winning enough. So in many ways, I think the conversation still has to be, what are we doing? What are institutions doing? What is the sport doing to both make sure that you're filling that pipeline? And then on the backside, there's been conversations people have had for a long time. Is there something that resembles, and this may be tied back to something we talked about last week, you got a Rooney Rule in the NFL, and it's been fairly successful in at least increasing the conversation and giving people interviews. As we start to look at the possible divide of the Power 5 conferences, maybe and beyond, from the rest of the NCAA, one of the things the NCAA will always say, well, we can't institute a Rooney Rule. We don't have that kind of power. Maybe as these major football schools move into something that looks a lot more like the NFL, maybe this is the time to have that actual conversation.
I'm glad you bring up the Rooney Rule, because to me, what the Rooney Rule does is it tries to reform the system. And I think the dearth of black head coaches at the FBS level is a pretty high profile example of systemic racism. I don't believe that ADs or presidents or board of trustees members are purposely excluding black people from being head coaches of their college football teams. I just don't think the system gives them a fair shake. And the statistics bear that out. Of all of the black men that have ever been a head coach of an FBS football team and been fired, 6 in the eternity of the sport have ever been rehired as an FBS head coach.
Yeah.
There are currently, right now, this year, 19 white head coaches that have been fired as a head coach at the FBS level.
Sure.
I mean, to me, that is an example of the system not being set up to be reflective of the player population.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting and very telling statistic, because you're right. The number of times, like if you're a college football fan, you're like, we're hiring that guy? Like, we're hiring that guy? He just lost, right? And so we talked about this with Liberty, right? Like Liberty hired like a guy who, was fired for cause.
Oh yeah. These aren't guys that are just fired for losing football games, right? Or for not recruiting well. Oftentimes they are fired for very nefarious reasons.
I mean, and you can look at in basketball. I mean, Rick Pitino is a member of the MAC basketball conference. He was fired for what most people might suggest was a kind of a career ender. Not the case. So I don't, again, people far more informed than I have work to do on figuring out how to make that process more fair and more equitable. But I also think, as is everything, it doesn't exist in a bubble, right? This is part of the problem when you look at any one hiring situation, you look at that kind of in a, well, what do we do here to right a wrong? And you realize this is a wrong that extends into every corner of our society, that starts, everywhere from the presidency down to every city in America, and has been ongoing for upwards of 400 years. And so that becomes the real challenge, right? And whether this becomes something that is, buoyed by player advocacy, I don't know, and it's tough. It's really tough to put things on the back of college football players because they have a very short time period and they have a lot to lose. But
now more than ever, those players, I think, recognize the power that they have, right? I look at what McCord Maker did in college basketball, first ever 5-star recruit to go to an HBCU. He's playing at Howard University. No player with his pedigree has ever played at a school like Howard. And now, granted, the HBCUs are not FBS football, but I wonder if we're going to start seeing some major football recruits going to a place like Jackson State, which just hired Deion Sanders as their head coach.
By the way, I am a huge fan of the new Deion Sanders Subway commercial. It is a great.
Okay.
No, you've seen it. Haven't you seen it?
Probably.
It's a great commercial. It's a great commercial.
I mean, I think Deion Sanders is great at everything he does, and he should be on television as much as possible.
Deion Sanders is great on television. I think, and I'm very interested to see how that program bears. And I think you're right. Recruiting, the recruiting questions are very interesting because are people going to buy into like, hey, in the end of the day, I think I know how to get to the NFL. Like, I think I know this track pretty well. And I think I can help you walk down, go down there. And that's going to be the proof in the pudding for Deion. It is as much the success of the program, more of, is this now a pipeline to the NFL? And am I able to recruit that way? I think it's going to be a long time before I think it's more likely in college basketball than I think it is in college football. You've done, go on one of these recruiting visits, go visit Jackson State. Yes. You can hang out with Deion Sanders and then go walk around in Florida, walk around in Alabama, take a tour of the facility at Oregon, right? I mean, Oregon's obviously, recruits a lot of black athletes on their football program. Not a state that I typically Eugene, Oregon, not a place I thought of as being particularly diverse outside of that context. So it's interesting. At some point, you look. I mean, high school football players are smart. They want the best opportunity for them, certainly, both educationally, and they want, certain pedigree in their universities, but they want a place that's going to put them on television, that is going to put them with coaches that know how to get them to the next level, and it's giving them an opportunity to win. So I think that will always be the most important thing for college athletes.
Keith, last thing we got to touch on. We are not a political show. However, I think we got a taste of what these scandals in the Joe Biden administration are going to be. Big brouhaha last week about Joe Biden's wife, who is a doctor of education, not referring to herself as Dr. Jill Biden, that she shouldn't do that because she ain't out there on the front line saving lives. So I throw it to you, Dr. Keith Strudler. Are you going to drop the moniker?
Who said that she shouldn't say that?
The Wall Street Journal.
Oh, well, you
didn't hear about this?
Yeah.
It was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by an idiot who won't be named on this program.
Let me tell you what. The Wall Street Journal wasn't sitting in the cubicle next to me night after night in Gainesville while I pored over research articles so I could finally get the sticker to put on the back of my car that said, "Finally done," spelled PHIN. Finally done. PhD, my friend. So they can suck it for all I care. I am a doctor. I'm a doctor as much as that chiropractor is, right? And they call themselves doc. I can give you a list of people who call themselves doctors who are below me. I understand I'm not the top. I'm no surgeon. I'm not curing COVID. I'm not the top of the food chain, but I ain't the bottom either. So Dr. Strudler it is. Right, Dr. Biden?
That's all the time we got in this episode of Sportish. For our producer, Mike Wallace, and Dr. Keith Strudler. My name's Geoff Brault. Thanks for checking us out on For the Fans. Visit our archives, ftfnext.com. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.